All right, so we're going to be identifying your skills. Pop quiz. Are you ready? What is a skill? Put it in the chat. And in order to identify it, you need to know what it is, right? So put in the chat what you think a skill is. Cool. Some really great answers. I would check out the chat. But all of you are doing it, are essentially saying, some of you more eloquently than this, are saying anything you can do. And it doesn't necessarily even need to add value. It's just something that you can do, right? The add value part is important for job hunting, but a skill in a general sense is anything you can do. You could even think of smiling as a skill, right? Not everybody can smile. So the next question is, how many skills do you think the average person has? Wow, we're all over the place, aren't we? Cool. So some of you hit it right on. It's between 500 and 800. What I would like you to do is I'm going to give you a minute and I want you to list what skills you have. Not what you think you have, but the skills that you have. Everybody has skills. So starting now, make a list of all the skills you think you have. You have 30 seconds left. Write down all the skills that you think you have. Make a list. We're making a list. 15 seconds. Okay, before I ask you to add them up, how many felt that say easy or hard in the chat? How many people thought that was an easy assignment and some people thought it was hard? Medium. Those of you who said challenging or hard or difficult, why? Can you say in just a few words in the chat why you think it was difficult or hard or challenging? Because of the time pressure. Too many skills to choose from. Okay. All right. So add them up and put in the chat how many you came up with in a minute. How many skills did you come up with in that minute? Wow. Very cool. Very cool. So what do you think? How many skills do you think an average person can identify outside of the time limit of a minute? That was something I imposed. But if someone was to give a little bit of time, wow, some of you are very generous. It's about 10. if people sit down, right, Vanessa, sit down and think about it, they can do an average of 10 skills, right? Well, what percentage of people cannot identify, sell, or prove their skills during an interview? So that's when the value part comes in that some of the people said in the chat. Yep. So it's 80%. Cannot. Cannot. Why do you think it's important to be able to identify, sell, and prove your skills during an interview? Can you say it in just a couple words in the chat? Why is that important to be able to do that? Yep. Great. Yeah. Because what you'll learn when you take the other two classes, resume and interview, is if you have the interview, if you get a call and say, we want to interview you, your resume sold you on the skills that are needed for the job. So then after that, you have to prove those skills in an interview. So it's important to know what they are and to be able to talk about them and make a big deal about it. So which one of these helps you develop the skills that you've listed and also other skills that you might have that you didn't think about? We have a very smart group here today. Very, very, very smart. Yep. So it is G, right? Yep. When you come to an interview, what do you think are the most important skills to an employer? What do you think? No matter what the job, no matter what the job, what do you think are the most important skills? Yep. And what most of you are putting in there are soft skills or people skills, right? If future employers want to know your soft skills, your people skills. It's easier to train somebody how to do data entry into a specific program used by a company. It's a harder thing to teach somebody and have them know how to deal with difficult people, how to do good customer service. The soft skills or the people skills are different and harder to teach. What are some soft skills? What would you say are soft skills? Put it in the chat. What would be lumped under that listing? Right. Listening, collaboration, flexibility, adaptability, active listening, communication, teamwork, conflict resolution, teamwork. Yep. Leadership, teamwork. Yep. All of those, right? So they're not what could be classified hard skills, how to weld, how to use Microsoft Office, how to use a CRM, a customer management service. Those are customer relation management software. So yeah, those are hard skills, soft skills. Because during an interview, they want to know, will you fit in? Will you be a good team member, right? Will you be able to adapt and learn, right? Are you open to learning? So, how does identifying your skills help with your job search? Um, why do you think that it's important to identify your skills before you start working on your resume or start editing your resume? Why do you think it's important to know what your skills are? It's easier to complete, to focus on priorities. Yep. Some of us, and it's talked about as the Minnesota, we don't like to boast about ourselves. A good exercise to do is to think of 25 to 30 people that you can email and say, what do you think are my top 3 skills? And the reason you do between 25 and 30 is not everybody checks their email. Not everybody will be comfortable responding, but you might get 10, right? So that's 30%, 33%. And you might be surprised that people feel that your top skills are things that you didn't even realize were skills, or you didn't even realize that you could boast about those. So it's a really interesting exercise, and it can be really refreshing. So I highly recommend you doing that if you're struggling with your skills. So there are 3 types of skills, right? So we talked about the soft skills and we talked about the job skills. And then in between there are the transferable skills. So you have skills that are specific to being an accountant, being a lawyer, being a manager, working with data in the IT business. You have all of those skills, but a group of people that I've been working with a lot lately are teachers who do not want to go back to teaching K through 12. So they have a specific set of skills used for teaching K through 12, and they want to figure out how to transfer those skills to different jobs. So it's really many, many jobs use the same type of set of skills. Project management skills are used in a lot of different jobs. You just might not have the title of project manager. And so then it's your job to sell those skills, those jobs. A lot of times it's just a matter of tweaking the pros in your resume. So this is a really great quote by Bill Gates. I'm hopefully we all know who Gates is. If you do not know your skills, understand your skill level, it's hard to have confidence in them, right? And the whole job process forces us to step out from behind whatever wall we're standing by and to step confidently in who we are and the skills that we have and our convictions, right? And then we can project and convey that information to others. Consider everything when you're identifying your skills. Don't limit it. Don't get hung up on definition. Include skills you're just learning, right? I'm also an artist in my other life, and I'm learning how to work with glass, which is a totally different medium. So I can say I have glass skills. I'm way, way down on the low end of the scale, but I know enough to be able to talk about them, right? And don't assume a skill is just part of the job, right? It might be an addition, and ask yourself when you're talking about your skills, can you prove it, right? What story, not is fictional, but nonfiction story do you have to prove that you have that skill? Because during the interview, you're going to be asked, what would you do in this situation, right? And that's an opportunity to highlight your skills and to prove that you have them. So, what are some steps to identifying your skills? Write down employment related activities, especially if you're going to stay in the same field, the same type of job. Write down skills that you've used in your job, skills that you wish you've had for your job, and then, list the tasks that are involved in performing that. So, one of my skills that I would need for my job is to be able to organize job fairs, right? Organize job fairs is an employment activity. So, what skills do I need for that, right? I need to network. I need to be able to schedule. I need to have follow up. So, I need to be able to communicate. List all the skills that are needed. And then again, network with people and ask them, what skills do you think I have? It's not fishing for compliments. It's trying to get a better handle on what you know and what you can. All right, so put in the chat, what are the 3 types of skills? Nobody knows. Should I go back to the slide? Right. Soft, job related, and transferable. Okay. Why is it important to be able to identify your skills? Put that in the chat. Why is it important to identify your skills? Right. Right. I think, at least in my opinion, the number one reason for identifying your skills and being able to prove them is confidence, right? How can you not go into an interview confidently? No, if you know your skills, right? If you know your skills, you're able to prove it. You can use them to answer some questions. It's confidence, right? You want to come across in your job search with confidence. And then, how would you identify your skills? Put in the chat a couple things, at least one thing you would do to identify your skills. Right. So we also talked about making the list of what you did for your job, right? And doing it. Cool. And the Career Force Center has something that will help you. If you go to careerforcemn.com, let's see. And so this is careerforcemn.com. And you go to online tools, there's an interest assessment and there's a skill assessment. So you might have the skills that it would take to be a plumber, but you have no interest in that job, right? You might have the skills to work with numbers, but you have no interest in doing that job, being an accountant. So here are 2 assessments that you can use. Employment ready assessment, it might be fun to take to see if you have all your ducks in a row, but here will help you with your skill identification and your interest assessment. So those are 2 good tools that are offered by the Career Force, by Deed, for you to check out. Sheila, is there anything in the chat, questions or anything before we go on to the next one?
No questions yet, Sandra.
Cool. Thank you. All right. Applications. So, how many people feel that filling out applications is a fun and exciting thing to do? You wake up every morning, go, wow, let me do that. That's right. Yeah. So it's not exciting. There are things that you can do to make it less of a burden, less of a yuck. A lot of you put yuck in there. So you can get organized, right? Have your information ready, right? What are the exact dates that you worked someplace? What's the address of the place? What's the phone number, the salary? What's the name of your supervisor? How do you get a hold of them, especially if they're not at the company any longer, right? You should have essentially all this information in a souped up resume, because on your resume you don't put the company's address, you don't put the supervisor's name, you don't do the salary range. But if you use your resume as a base and fill this in, when you get to an application, you can just cut and paste. There are many applications that start the screening process for job applicants at the application phase, right? They give you only so much time to fill out the application and then it times out. Sometimes you can save where you're at, go get the information that's needed and come back. Sometimes you can't. So you need to be organized. If you have all this information ready and in a Word document or a Google Doc, if you use Google applications, you can just copy it and paste it or type it in, but it's there, right? You also need to check your attitude, right? You need to be positive, and you need to be honest, because your application becomes a legal document. If you lie on your application, get the job, and they find out you lied, that's grounds for dismissal. So you always want to make sure that you're honest, right? You want to use keywords with your application, and you can, because many employers use applicant tracking systems, and they scan the resume, they scan the information that you filled in for the keywords, and the keywords can be found in the posting. And this is a really great place to use AI. So an application like ChatGPT, Gemini is another one. There's a couple. If you put in the job posting and you ask it, what are the keywords? It will tell you the keywords that it thinks are the keywords. And then you can check your resume. You can check the things that you fill into the blanks to see if you've used those words. You also have to remember that this is a chance to sell your skills. And when you selling your skills, you just don't say data entry. You know, did you accurately, efficiently do data entry? They want to know not just that you can do something, but how you do it. You need to answer the question, so what? Always, always follow directions and be complete and be neat, which is kind of hard not to be within an application online. But it's very important. And if you're filling out a lot of applications, it's easy to slip into the mindset. They're all the same. I've done this before. This is the same, but they're not. Everyone has their own flavor, their own take, their own language. So it would be not worth your time filling out an application if you're not willing to read it, to take the time to read it, to take the time to follow the directions as they have them listed. Salary can be a potential screening thing on online applications. It's often asked. And I would make an appointment at your local career force and see how it's handled in the businesses in your area. They would have a really good handle on that. Sometimes there's illegal questions. Then you have to decide, do I want to work there? Right? Sometimes they're required questions. I've heard a couple times from people about some of the questions, and is it a red flag? Because they legally cannot ask you those questions, but they're making it so you can't proceed with the application system. So you could do a screenshot and report them, or you can just forget about applying there. Sheila, there were some questions.
Yes, we have a couple questions, Sandra. First one is it a requirement to list your last employer on the application? I worked at my last job for 3 months, but the one before it was 5 years.
Right. So that's a checkable fact. And I would put it on there. Again, depending on why you're no longer there, that might be a question to ask somebody at your local career force. We don't have time to go into that information. And somebody asked, what are some illegal questions? Your age, your race, your family, your religion. Those are just some, but you can easily Google what are illegal questions to ask.
Yeah, and we might have a link to that on one of our sites. I'll see if I can find it for them.
Okay, that would be great.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I think that was all the questions.
Okay. There is a law in Minnesota that they can no longer base what they pay you on your past salary. So that's something to be taken into consideration. It's very, very important to remember that the application, your resume, when submitted, becomes a legal document. One of our colleagues shared something that happened when he worked for a private business, that after someone had been there for a year, they found that there was a significant lie or incorrect information on their resume, which would have affected them being hired or not, even though this person had been doing a stellar job for the last year. That person was let go, and the company, for legal reasons, reviewed the last 10-year of hire. So you just don't want to lie. You want to make sure that everything you have on there is as true as you know it. All right. One of the most important things you can do, resume, emails, is to proofread. How many F's do you see? Put it in the chat. How many F's do you see? Okay, a few of you got it right. There's 6. A lot of people forget the of. And then if I wanted to push it, I said on the screen, right? Right, Wendy. So that's 7. We become myopic, which means when you read what you've written over and over again, you do not really see what's there. And so it's important to have somebody else read it. There's a really great function within Word. If you can search it, and it says read out loud. So if you search in the search bar at the top of a Word document, an Excel document, even a PowerPoint, if you say read out loud, the computer will read to you what you have written. And a lot of times that's a great way to find common mistakes, not making something plural, not adding ed to something. It's a great tool, but you want to make sure that you do not have, and spell check is important. any errors in whatever you submit. And that includes the application. And that's a really good reason to have all the information that's needed in an application in a Word document. You can proof it, have somebody else proof it, have it read out loud to you via the program, and then you're just copying and pasting, and you don't have to worry about it. Nine. Someone said 9. Interesting. Oh, if you're going to the bottom, that's 8. Very clever. Cool. All right. A lot of times, the reason that someone is no longer working at a place comes with a lot of angst, right? And you want to choose the best language possible, right? If it wasn't your choice, it was an involuntary separation, there was a layoff, downsizing, position was eliminated, reorganization. If it was your choice, you resigned, you need to be able to explain that, or it was a voluntary separation. All of this, what the reason that you're not working where you were previous working is a very personal thing, and every story is different. Every story has different nuances, and this is a great place to utilize your local career force. Call and make an appointment. They're happy to meet with you. It could be in person, on the telephone, or even virtually, right? You're here at this meeting, this workshop virtually, and you can meet with somebody, you can explain your situation, and you can get a perspective, a different perspective on it than you might be getting from friends and family, and they can help you answer that question. Everybody who works at a career force is happy to help. They're trained, seasoned professionals who can work through the angst and help you feel more comfortable answering this. They can even help you practice. When we answer questions that aren't comfortable, the more that we talk about them, the more that they come out of our mouth and we hear them in our ear versus having them in our head and not out into the world, it becomes easier. You become more comfortable and you're able to answer them with more confidence. And it's all about the ease and the comfort that you answer that question. That's very important. Before I go on to the next section, Sheila, is there anything I should address?
Yeah, we have a couple questions about applications, Sandra. Someone wants to know how specific can they get with asking me about my disability?
So they, you know, so I've never had this question before, Sheila. They really can't ask you about your disability and they have to make accommodations, is what I understand is the law. You don't even have to disclose a disability, is my understanding.
Yeah, until after offer of employment, especially if you need an accommodation, for it.
Right. I mean, an example is I teach at the Textile Center, which is an umbrella group for all the textile guilds and the textile community of the Twin Cities and the state. And they hired a new person in education who had she was allergic to what's the rubber bands. All that I like, it starts with an L, but I can't think of the name right now. But so, yes. And so they had to buy all new supplies, including gloves that we use like in the dye lab, because she had this allergy that was disclosed after she accepted the offer. So yeah, legally, you do not have to disclose a disability.
Okay. And then Sandra, we have a couple questions about disclosing your salary or your wage on an application. Do you have to put that on there if they're asking for your last wage?
Legally, you don't, but a lot of applications make it a prerequisite to continuing. Do you have any worker? So some people say put in 00. Um, yeah, I've never really felt comfortable with any way of dealing with that. Sheila, do you have any suggestions?
Yeah, that's really a personal choice, I would say. But I know, like the federal application, they ask for your wage on there. I don't recall, Sandra, if the state one does.
Yeah, it asks for a minimum.
Okay,
Yeah,
yeah.
the state asks for a minimum. Yeah, you have to decide, and a lot of times that's a bigger question for older workers. Someone said you can put in 00, but that might be a disqualifying. You don't know how they're filtering. Um, so it's something that you have to play with. And it might be a regional thing. So there, the career force staff might have an understanding about how different companies in their area handle that.
Yeah, and I think with that new law they just passed too, I don't think they can ask for wage
Right,
any longer on an application. I'm
right.
gonna find that and put that in the chat or in the follow-up email
Yeah, that's a great
as well.
idea.
Okay.
Uh,
And then one other question, or more like a comment, someone had mentioned that all the applications that they fill out ask about race and stuff. And what I want to say about that is it should be on a section of the application that says voluntary.
Right.
Sometimes they use that to just see if their company is meeting their goals for their hiring, but those questions should be on a voluntary section of the application.
And on
And if
this,
it,
go on.
I just say, and if it isn't in that section, you do not have to answer those.
Right. And on the state application, it even says hiring manager will not see this information. So
Right.
it's totally for federal reporting is what it is. All right. So now the portfolio. Most of the time we think about an artist having a portfolio, but a portfolio is just a collection of information. And for job hunting, it's just a collection of information to use when you're job hunting. And if you go to an in-person interview, it's always good to have copies of your resume, copies of your cover letter. It's always good to have your reference sheet. They might ask you right then and there, or letters of recommendation. Um, if possible, it's good to have work samples. And for jobs that you have to have certain certifications, like a CNA or a nurse or a doctor, things like that, it's good to have copies of your licensure and your certification. And one of the important things is that everything is branded or shows a unified front. So what does that mean? So this is a resume that somebody did. It's got nice margins. It's easily read. You can do speed reading, but this is the cover letter they submitted, right? So there's a disconnect between the resume, which shows a lot of work, a lot of effort, a lot of thought, and the cover letter. It might be written well, but it doesn't show it. There's nothing that connects the cover letter with the resume. So you can easily brand, right? If the name and the address and all this stuff is part of a header, it can be the header for the cover letter, right? Paragraphs help with readability. Oh, so, spacing within the page helps with with the readability. You can do the same thing for the reference letter. And letter of recommendations are just how they present them. But it's important to be able to have this stuff available. A colleague of ours went to an in-person interview before she worked for the state for a company. And when she got there, she was told that they had to reschedule because the servers were down, the printers were down, and the panel didn't have copies of her resume and cover letter. And she said, well, I have 5 copies with me. Will that help? And they were incredibly relieved. They were able to do the interview. It didn't disrupt their schedule. And needless to say, she got the job because she showed that she was ready and had attention to detail. What, if you were to do a portfolio, what would be some work sample that you think would be worth sharing? Put it in the text. What would be a work sample that you could put in your text, in your portfolio document? Cool. Great ideas. Great ideas. You have to be aware, though, that some of the information that you did for your job might be proprietary and you won't be able to share details, right? You have to be more general with maybe some information that you share. You could use meeting minutes, but you would want to make sure that the information was general. Because you don't want to give away company secrets. I worked for an outplacement firm and they even edited what I put on my LinkedIn profile when I was talking about my job because they didn't want their competitors to know precisely what their staff did because it gave them, their staff gave them an edge, and they didn't want their competitors to know. So you need to be conscious of that when you're doing it. All right. We have about 12 minutes for questions or comments.
We do have a few questions left, Sandra.
Cool.
You were talking about the portfolio. Someone wants to know, is it necessary to have a cover letter?
Yeah, I think they'll talk about that in the resume class, but this is what I know about cover letters. When I worked for LHH, Lehigh Harris, which dealt with the whole ladder of a corporation, but mostly the top part of the ladder, we had HR panels. So we had people from HR, the HR departments from the top companies in the Twin Cities come and talk to the people we were working with. And cover letters always came up. And their response was, well, 50%. So if there was a panel of 6, 50% of them read cover letters, 50% didn't. But they all agreed that if it came down to 2 candidates, the cover letter was deciding. And they all agreed that it was noted that the cover letter was submitted. So if you have the opportunity to do it, do it. And if you're applying for a state job, always do it. Always, always do it. Right. How many people would prefer to do a resume or a cover letter? If you would only do one to submit for a job application, which would it be, a resume or a cover letter? Everybody says resume. Oh, one person said cover letter. So yeah, the dreaded cover letter. All right, someone actually loves writing them. Right, someone said the cover letter is harder because you have to be more human. That's a really great comment. Cool.
Sandra, do you think you need a cover letter when you go to a job fair? Like, how would you handle that if you were?
I wouldn't take a cover letter, no. I would just
Yeah.
take my resume. And the resume you take is going to be more general than the cover letter that you send specifically with an applicant. The resume that you take will be more general because you might be talking to multiple employers and you know the specifics about a job. So it would just, you would want to highlight your top skills.
Okay, let's see what else we have. You did talk about not being able to share examples, that have private company information on them. Someone was asking about they have a non-compete agreement, so they can't share work examples and
Right.
wanted to know how to get around it.
So you could generalize what you've done, right? This is a spreadsheet that I developed, but you don't have to say what the columns and the rows say, but you could talk about the functionality of it.
And someone wants to know, is it legal for employers to ask a candidate to do a live marketing plan during an interview? They were asked
Yes.
to do one for a VP marketing job. The job was changed to a sales job, and ultimately they hired someone else. And she informed me they used the marketing plan I created with a few modifications.
Right. That's so
Yeah.
sad. But
Yeah.
but that's, there are interviews that include work samples. If you're a welder, they might ask you to do a weld. My husband was assistant dean at a college at the university, and when they hired new professors, they had to do a class for present a class like they would present it to students for tenured faculty. So they were see how they taught. So that it's legitimate, and it's sad that they stole your marketing plan and didn't hire you.
Someone's asking about including a list of contacts for sales position in your portfolio. Is it appropriate to do that?
What does that mean?
Because if you do not receive the job, the company then has access to the information. Yeah, I don't think they need to know your contacts.
No,
I think that's
they don't.
necessary.
Yeah.
No. Is it okay to keep your resume the same but tailor the cover letter to the specific role?
So every job posting has its own keywords, right? So you want to have your resume speak the same language as the job posting. So every resume needs to be tweaked, not rewritten. And if you take the resume class, we'll talk about that. But you want to use the same language. So in the posting, as an example, might say customers, and in your resume, you might say client, right? So you want to go through and change all clients to customers. So there's little tweaks like that. So the cover letter and the resume don't need to be totally rewritten, but they need to be tweaked.
We have a couple questions about resumes. I would highly recommend the resume class on Wednesday. It's very good.
Yes, please.
But someone's asking if they're changing careers, should they use a functional resume?
And that's totally a conversation with somebody at the career force, right?
Yeah.
Because you don't know for highlighting what you do and what you're moving to. That's a personal, there's a story about that. There's questions to be answered. I would call your career force. And a functional resume is where you have buckets of skills and list accomplishments under the skills, and then list towards the bottom your work record, where you worked and when you worked there. But if you go to the resume class, you'll find out all those wonderful details.
And same with addressing a gap in your resume. Again, that workshop's really great. and they'll answer all those questions for you.
Or reach out to someone at a career force in your area, right?
Yeah, because there's also questions about, what kind of examples to use in your portfolio if you're in a specific industry. That's a really good thing to do with someone locally at your career force.
Right.
And we'll be putting the link to sign up for job search appointments in the follow-up email. So you're able to do that, make an appointment with somebody. So any questions related specific to what you would like to do, please reach out to your local career force. I saw something fly by in the chat. Someone asked me if I missed their question about skills on a resume, and I think I did. So if you want to put it in the chat again, I'll see if I see it in there.
And somebody said they weren't hired because they were overqualified, and that again will be addressed in the resume workshop. If you have a lot of experience, you don't necessarily need to add it all on the resume. You need to address the required and the preferred requirements that are listed in the posting, but that will be addressed in the workshop.
Okay. Someone's asking if we have modifiable templates for cover letter and resumes.
There are
Career
examples.
Force.
There are examples on careerforcemn.com. They're not modifiable, but they show you both layout. And an example. And you can find out about the 3 types of resumes on careerforcemn.com. It's chronological, functional, and combination. And there's examples of each of those on careerforcemn.com. If you put in the search engine resume, you'll get to a page that talks about all that information.
Yeah, and I'm going to put the link in there for to sign up for a job search appointment.
Cool.
I think I have.
Yeah. Right. This is a good place in your job search to make sure that you're organized and you got all your ducks in a row, right? So do that Word document that has all the information that you feel that you've come across in filling out applications, get it proofed and vetted, and know your skills. Get a rock solid resume and get some rock solid interview practice behind you. And there are a lot of tools within the career force that can help you get that. And one of the resume workshops, the hour and a half or the hour one, are really good and address things that will help you.
Yeah, and someone is asking too that is it challenging for someone who has no experience here, as in the US, but has experience outside of the US in their field? Again, that's a really good conversation to have one-on-one with somebody so they can help you pick out those key skills that are needed here for a specific job and target your resume towards that.
Right.
Anything you want to add to that, Sandra?
Nope, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I did talk to somebody recently who had taught English as a second language in Japan for 20 years and then came here. And there were things that make it really hard to find a job because he didn't have a credit rating in the United States. And sometimes that's a check that people do when they do background checks. He didn't have references who spoke English who could address his qualifications and his experience. So there are interesting challenges when you get experience outside of the United States.
Okay, and I think we covered everything. If I did miss a question, I apologize. Please reach out to your local career force, and they can assist you as well. And I'll put that I'll put the link in there for the career force locations and phone numbers so you're able to easily contact somebody.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's important to leave. Well, first, before I say that, put in the chat one thing you learned today that you didn't know coming in. What's one thing you learned that will help you with your job search? that you didn't know when you started at 10? Put it in the chat, please. Cool. Cool. Great. Good. Great. All right. Thank you for putting those things in. Yeah. So just remember, be confident, right? Figure out your skills, figure out what you added of value to your previous employers, and then just step into the job search process with confidence because you got this. And we're here to help. The Career Force Center, Career Force is here to help, either online or in person. Check out the website and make the most of the tools that you have. All right. Everybody have a great week. And thank you for spending the last hour with us.